The stories presented in this video are real, but we have changed the characters' names and altered images to protect their identities. The creator of this video is not an investigative officer. These narratives have been sourced from various internet platforms. Our intent is not to accuse or target anyone in particular. Thank you for understanding.
A huge duffel bag was found abandoned on October 17, 2015, in rural Greene County along a barren section of Highway 12. An old guy contacted 911 after becoming suspicious of the bag. The exceptionally hefty luggage was difficult for them to lift when the responding officer arrived. They opened the bag to continue their investigation, and what they found would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The mixed family with an apparently flawless exterior, the Carter Brown family, was at the center of this catastrophe. November 12, 1982, saw the birth of Michael Carter, a prosperous businessman in his late 40s in Jacksonville, Florida. Michael was brought up in a middle-class home with strong morals and a diligent work ethic. He was raised with a sense of duty and ambition by his parents, who were also his high school sweethearts. Michael had a calm tenacity about him from an early age, which would come in handy for his future pursuits. Michael gained a reputation as a rising star in his industry as he matured and showed off his charm and innate leadership qualities. 6 years ago, he wed Samantha Brown, a stunning and endearing lady in her mid-30s. With their children from past marriages, Michael Carter and his ex-wife, Laura Carter, they had become a close-knit family. Their journey started in 1990, more than 20 years ago, when they were young and full of ambition, pursuing their goals in the fast-paced metropolis of New York. Michael, a rising star in the banking industry, was presenting on investment ideas at a networking event when they first met. Brilliant marketing executive Laura Carter was in the crowd and was struck right away by Michael's charm and confidence. When they started talking after the presentation, Michael was captivated by Laura Carter's brilliance, originality, and attractiveness. After exchanging phone numbers, they met for dinner at a hip Manhattan restaurant for their first date. They immediately realized they had a passion for business, art, and travel because of their unmistakable connection. As their romance developed, they encouraged each other's professional goals. Thanks to Laura Carter's marketing skills, Michael was able to recruit high-profile clients for his financial firm, which flourished. In the meantime, Laura Carter's marketing company prospered, and she was able to grow it thanks to Michael's financial advice. Together, they created a corporate empire that saw Laura Carter's marketing company win several accolades, and Michael's company rise to prominence in the banking sector. Peers looked up to and revered the golden pair of New York City. Their private lives were similarly prosperous. In the presence of friends, family, and business acquaintances, they tied the knot in a sumptuous ceremony at an opulent Hamptons house. Ethan, their gorgeous son, was the center of their world. But as time went on, gaps in their supposedly flawless relationship started to show. Their marriage suffered as a result of Michael's lengthy work hours and frequent travel, and Laura Carter began to feel abandoned and alone. She immersed herself in her work, but their separation increased. The distance between them grew even though they made an attempt to patch things up. Their talks grew tense and they started fighting more regularly. Their friends and family observed the difference in them, and they were clearly at odds. They got into a heated fight at a charity banquet one fateful night in front of their friends and coworkers. After the confrontation, Laura Carter stormed out of the venue, leaving Michael embarrassed and alone. Michael's discovery that Laura Carter was having an affair with a younger guy, a gifted artist she had met at a gallery opening, dealt the death blow. Michael was horrified to learn of this and came to the conclusion that his marriage could not be saved. With a contentious custody dispute over Ethan, both parties to their nasty and well-publicized divorce battled it out. They ultimately had joint custody, but the harm had already been done. Their hitherto devoted partnership has dissolved in discord and sadness. It was up to Michael to gather up the fragments. His career and personal lives are a complete mess. He immersed himself in his profession, turning to it as a way to escape the hurt of his broken marriage. However, the scars from his divorce never completely went away, and he lived with them for years to come. Soon after their 2006 divorce, Laura Carter's health started to deteriorate quickly. She'd been keeping a terrible secret. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, which had aggressively progressed throughout her body, was the diagnosis. A year after their divorce on March 2, 2007, she passed away from the illness in spite of her valiant battle. Even though their ending was turbulent, Michael was astonished and devastated to learn of her dying. He had always loved her, and her passing awakened a range of feelings he had long since repressed. He witnessed the effects of her death on his son, Ethan, who was finding it difficult to deal with his mother's passing when he went to her burial. Michael got to know Samantha Brown in 2008 while working through his loss. Samantha was a friend of a friend and a calm and lovely person. She had lost her spouse in a horrific accident only a few years earlier, leaving her a widow herself. Michael was pulled to her warmth and compassion as they became close through their common experiences of heartbreak and loss. Michael was reluctant to be married again at first, but he soon realized that he was falling in love with Samantha. He was happy to have her back in his life since she made him feel happy and lighthearted again. In 2009, they tied the knot in a private ceremony attended by close friends and relatives. Ethan, Michael's 22-year-old son, was an extroverted and charming young man who had always shared a tight bond with his father. Mia, Samantha's 25-year-old daughter, was a beautiful, vibrant young woman who had taken the family by storm. The Carter Brown family gave the impression of being a devoted and helpful family to strangers. When Mia's lifeless corpse was found bound inside a huge duffel bag and abandoned along the lonesome stretch of Highway 12 in rural Greene County on October 18, 2015, everything changed for the Carter Brown family. The family's flawless facade started to fall apart when the horrifying revelation shocked the little town. Upon examining the murder scene, authorities discovered that Mia's corpse had been severely disfigured, exhibiting signs of intense stress and struggle. The once nimble young lady, full of potential and vitality, had met an awful end. The family of Mia was devastated and bewildered to learn of her murder. 2 days prior, Mia had texted her parents to say she was heading off with her boyfriend Ryan and would return the next week. Officer Johnson took up the investigation as soon as the horrifying discovery of Mia's death was discovered. The Carters were being questioned by the police in their house on October 19th. Ethan was the first person to be interviewed. When Ethan was asked if he had a close relationship with his stepsister, the police listened carefully as he opened up about his relationship with Mia. Ethan clarified that he had never felt connected to his stepsister and that Mia wasn't the reason behind it. Instead, it was because he had found it difficult to respect his father's choice to get married again following the death of his mother. He had floated the notion of another lady replacing his mother because he felt a sense of duty to her memory. While Samantha was gone on a business trip, Michael was at home by himself with Ethan when the police spoke with him. Michael said that Mia kept her affairs private and confided in no one, not even her mother. Ethan had stated that he and Mia were not close, but he subsequently disclosed that Mia and Ethan were. Michael characterized their bond as intensely affectionate and sibling-like. Ethan seemed to know more about Mia's life than any other member of the family, he observed. Michael gave an explanation for his whereabouts on the day Mia left the house, saying he was at work starting at 8 in the morning. Until 5 p.m., he made reference to a possible confirmation of his alibi, a noon meeting with coworkers. During their investigation, the police discovered discrepancies in Michael and Ethan's testimony, as well as their divergent interpretations of Mia and Ethan's connection. Through his co-workers, the police were able to verify Michael's alibi, but the inconsistencies in the family members' testimony created more concerns. After conducting an autopsy on Mia's severed body on October 21, 2015, the forensics department sent the police a report detailing their findings. It was discovered that she had been smothered to death prior to being dismembered. The murder weapon was thought to be a large knife, likely a butcher knife, based on the wounds on the body. They looked through the deceased's files. They called the Carters to give their statements at the station since they did not find any significant indication that would have led them to the murderer. They were called on the 22nd. When was the last time Michael saw or spoke with Mia before she left? After giving it some thinking, Michael replied, "I remember coming home early on the 16th. around 2 or 3 p.m., to pick up something I forgot. He had believed that the voice of Mia was coming from Ethan's room. He went on to say that he had knocked on the door but got no answer. He knocked and received no answer, so he assumed everyone was out and didn't give it much thought because the door was locked. As he talked, the cops recorded his statement. Michael then showed them the text she sent him indicating that she was planning to see Ryan. When they inquired about his identity, Michael said that he was Mia's boyfriend. She had never texted him about such things or her previous adventures with him, he said, so he thought it was odd. After questioning him, Ethan provided the police with his address, which they discovered right away, thanks to a fresh lead. Ryan Cooper was taken into custody and interrogated. When they questioned him about why he killed Mia, he denied it, saying that he had no intention of killing someone he had once loved. He continued by saying that they had broken up 2 months ago, which was the last time he had seen her. A week before to the murder, they investigated his activities and verified the alibi he gave for his actions on the 16th, the day the victim departed the house. After they verified it, they released him. The police had now returned to the start. Lead was absent. The deceased person's phone, whose number her stepfather had given them, was located in a garbage pile not far from the site where the corpse had been discovered, so they were unable to track it. After reviewing the case file once again and verifying the statements they had obtained, they decided to concentrate on Ethan, Michael's son. Despite his claims to be distant from the victim, he appeared to know more about her than her stepfather, including specifics about her partner. On October 23rd, 2 police officers paid a visit to the Carter Brown home the next day. Ethan was called into the living room this time and asked where he had been the day the dead had departed the house. Ethan said he spent that day at a friend's house. They questioned Ethan about his activities between 1 p.m. and demanded further information, and 3 p.m. the day. They observed that he paused before replying. In response, he said he had been sleeping at home. He was suspected of lying by the police. They looked through the book, which had his father's written claim that he had knocked on Ethan's door and received no response. They started to go further. Ethan responded to their inquiries. The police chose to get in touch with the people Ethan had given as references in order to conduct a comprehensive investigation of his alibi. But when they contacted these connections, they learned something unexpected. None of them could verify that Ethan was present on the relevant day. To be precise, none of them claimed to have seen Ethan that day, which went against what he had said before. Suspicions were aroused by this fresh information. Therefore, the police proceeded to expand their investigation. In an attempt to obtain further information, they asked to view the CCTV video that was captured by nearby cameras when the Carters were living there. They obtained the tape, watched it closely, and came to an important conclusion. Ethan had driven his father's vehicle out of the complex at approximately 7 o'clock, according to the CCTV footage. October 16th, to be exact. An important fact that went against what he had said before. The police started looking into Ethan more after discovering additional information that raised the possibility that he was connected to Mia's disappearance. Serious doubts were raised regarding his involvement, since he had been observed leaving the complex around the time Mia vanished and had used his father's automobile. The police were committed to solving the case and learning the real reason for Mia's disappearance. They immediately asked for a warrant to search Carter Brown House, and on October 24th, that request was granted. When they examined Ethan's room, they were taken aback by what they found. The color of the duffel bag Mia was discovered in was repeated several times. His dresser drawer was searched by them. A slaughtering knife and a pair of gloves were discovered. The knife had a smear of blood on it. Without a doubt, it was the identical one he had used to dismember the victim. After gathering sufficient evidence, they arrested Ethan, who had been observing the entire time, on October 24th. Despite his insistence to the contrary, the police hauled him to their vehicle and took him into the district so they could conduct an investigation. Bloodstains were discovered by the forensics team in his room, and the girl's DNA was located on the pillow he had used to suffocate her. Other items discovered in the room indicated the closeness and intimacy between the 2 step-siblings. Ethan was forced to admit his guilt when the police presented him with all of the evidence they had, and he started crying uncontrollably. Contrary to what the police would believe, he had not killed Mia on purpose. He had come to really care for her. Their relationship had begun innocently enough, with a consoling moment that developed into more. He said that during a heated phone fight with her boyfriend, Mia had been weeping and her body was shaking the first time they had undressed one another. Since he was the only one in the area, he had gone to console her. Somehow they had found themselves sharing a bed, and their desire to each other had taken over. He went on to say that Mia had shown vulnerability and that he had been captivated to that. Her warm tears felt on his skin as he hugged her tight, and before he realized it, they were sharing a kiss. Even though it was a soft and delicate moment, something deeper within them had been aroused. He went on to say that he had experienced a mixture of exhilaration and shame as they had undressed one another. After all, they were step-siblings, and their parents would never be on board. However, they were unable to resist. Their bodies had been aching for each other's touch, attracting each other like magnets. The initial encounter was both uncomfortable and intense. They had experimented with one another's bodies, revealing fresh cravings and joys. Ethan felt alive, as if he had at last connected with a human being who could relate to him. They have been unable to be apart since then. During family get-togethers, they would steal looks at one another while holding hands beneath the table. They would stealthily move around, seizing intimate moments for kissing and making love. Ethan had never had feelings for somebody to that extent. To keep their secret safe, he had solely spoken lies to the police. He had no intention of killing Mia, nor of causing her any harm. He talked about what had happened that fateful day. Eager to resume their relationship, Mia had arrived to his room. And while she had been convincing, he had been reluctant at first. He'd been excited and scared at the same time as they started to undress, knowing that they may be found out at any time. His heart began to race when he heard the knock on the door. He'd freaked out, thinking his stepmother or father had found them. He had quickly made a choice that would follow him for the rest of his life. Mia's voice was starting to raise an alarm, so he had covered her face with the pillow in an attempt to stifle it. It had done the exact opposite of what he had expected, calming her down. Beneath him, Mia had resisted, her body tensing with panic. However, Ethan had been engrossed in his own fear and failed to observe. He had been still, fearing that he would be found out. Furthermore, he was unaware that Mia had ceased moving. Her dead eyes were looking back at him, but he hadn't noticed them until he'd removed the pillow, assuming all was well. He had been unable to process what had happened and had been in shock. Though it was too late, he had attempted to resuscitate her. Mia had vanished. Then in the room, he had attempted to put her body into one of his duffel bags, but it was too small. Trembling, he took the unimaginable action. Using the kitchen's butchering knife, he dissected her body parts and neatly packed them into his suitcase. Then he took off in his father's second vehicle and abandoned the bag along a lonely section of Highway 12. The minute Ethan confessed, the cops saw that their once pleasurable romance had turned disastrous. While Mrs. Samantha was being held by the police, Mr. Michael was able to visit his son behind bars. The day before, the police had contacted Mrs. Samantha to let her know that her daughter had died. She was restrained by them from gripping her spouse and nudging him with her heels. After viewing her daughter's horrible corpse, which she had seen to be healthy before setting out on her voyage, she had fainted. Amidst the chaos, Michael informed the authorities that he would send his solicitors to secure his son's release, maintaining that his son was not guilty and that he was forced to confess. The Carter Brown incident became well known, and several articles were published denouncing the boy's actions. Some publications claimed that the youngster did it accidentally and just needed a small fine. But because the subject was so delicate, they were flooded with criticism and had to be removed. Many readers kept up with the plot to find out what would happen to Ethan. Ethan appeared in court on November 1st to face his charges. He was given a life sentence after being proven guilty. Michael, Ethan's father, became enraged and yelled at the court. The penalty didn't seem fair to him. Michael was removed from the courtroom by the security personnel. Mia's mother, Samantha, sobbed uncontrollably. She continued to mourn her daughter. With everyone angry and passionate, the courtroom was a chaotic scene. Ethan's actions have resulted in a great deal of anguish. Even though he didn't kill his stepsister on purpose, should he still be punished severely for his crime? While some said that his careless acts still called for a harsh punishment, others thought a lighter term would be more appropriate. Could Michael and Samantha remain cohabit after his son had done such horrible things to her child?